All right, everybody, thanks for coming. If you don't know me, I'm Alan Kluge, the president of EO Chesapeake Bay, and I want to welcome you here today for our speaker. I want to thank our wonderful founding sponsor, Miles and Stockbridge, for hosting us again. Thank you. Thank you very much. So today we have Mason Harris. Funny story, kind of how we met Mason. We actually prospected him to join the chapter, and I know we're going to get him one of these days when he starts another business or buys another business or doesn't sell one of his businesses. He's got more stuff going on than the average EOer, which is 3 or 4 businesses. So do the math. I don't know. I don't know how he does it, but
medication.
But he's an author, published author, Entree Marketing, a book about restaurant marketing. He's a former EO member himself for about 8 years and was in forum with Vern Harnish, who is one of the founding members of the Entrepreneurs organization. And his current business, one of a couple, I guess, is a mobile billboard company. And he's a native New Yorker, but he's a Mets fan, so we're going to let it slide today, since they're not in contention with the Orioles. But without further ado, thanks a lot, Mason.
Alan,
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you guys for coming out. It's funny, I left my office in Rockville roughly at 2, because I like getting to a speaking engagement beforehand, checking out the room. If anybody else needs to go to the Orioles game, now's a good time. All right. So we'll assume we're here for at least half an hour. And DC always has traffic, so that didn't worry me. I come close to Baltimore, I see a lot of traffic. I'm going, it's the beginning of October, it's early in the afternoon. What could this possibly be? Then I thought, they're all coming to see me. And my whole mood changed. I'm kind of smiling at people across the room, I'm waving a little bit. I thought, Dennis, what a great job. Thank you. And I bet a lot of people are still stuck in traffic. So we can either wait another half an hour if we think more people are coming or get started. I guess the feeling is to get
the important people are all here.
The important people are all here.
Move the venue to the stadium.
Is what?
Yeah. Move the venue to the stadium.
That's right. And I feel badly for them because clearly we've affected their ability to reach people tonight. Several years ago, as my son was starting college, about several years ago, 5.5 years ago, I went to the University of Maryland. He's looking through this course schedule. He's going, Dad, what types of things, what courses should I be looking for? Because I got to think career, I got to think life. What's going to have the most impact on me? And he was in the business school, so he registered for whatever business courses. Was very concerned as he looked at everything. And I said, take the business courses because you need certain courses to graduate. Beyond that, just look at finding courses that interest you. And that led me to this. We take courses to potentially learn enough about an occupation or get into something that can serve us for a lifetime. But the most important lessons that we probably learned over the years came about through life. I never learned, for example, how to let somebody go in a company. Very difficult thing to do. You don't learn about that in school. You learn about that in life and how to handle it. I didn't learn, and none of us learn, how to make what we think is a permanent relationship stay permanent. That comes about through life. Didn't learn how to handle illness from people that we care about, and it doesn't look like they're going to recover. Those are life lessons. And what I'm going to be talking about today is taking what we've learned, what we might do in business on an everyday basis, and incorporating some life lessons. And I've created a model that hopefully will work. I call this, well, they have 2 names, Persuasion and Purpose in the era of, this was a hitchhiking symbol when I was growing up. Today it's the era of like. And that's really where we're living. Why persuasion? Because every one of us, even if we're not in sales, and most people think, well, if you're talking about persuasion, you're probably talking about sales. I don't sell for a living, I'm a bookkeeper. Or I'm an IT guy. But yet we, and more importantly, because I know everybody here has a number of these skills, our employees, our colleagues may not. So we'll get into, well, in a second we'll see, but the persuasion piece looks at what's happened in the research and the persuasion side, how can we become better at persuading others that we need to persuade, colleagues, family members, vendors, and how can we teach our employees to be better at the persuasion side. Why purpose? Because purpose is what gets us through every day, especially in the downturns. When things are bad, when we're reluctant to go in because we know it's going to be another miserable day, sales are lower than they should be. We have guaranteed loans, and people are calling about that. It can make it very trying for us in whatever our career is, but in particular as entrepreneurs. The second part of this I call chutzpah rules for the entrepreneurial organization. And using the idea of chutzpah, everybody familiar with chutzpah?
I learned today.
Okay, got it, okay. Before today, actually now, how would you define, Travis, how would you define chutzpah? What is it?
Oh, well, my Jewish friend Jeff Levine said it means big balls.
Okay, I did a presentation of a much earlier version of this. This one's going to be the best one, maybe. But for the AMA, and I asked that question, and a woman in the front just raised its balls. Cojones, whatever. What other definitions, if you were to describe what's chutzpah, what else does it mean to you?
Being bold,
Bold.
taking risks,
Bold, maybe audacious.
being
Risk-taking.
sound in who you are, not caring what others think or do, and
Okay.
charting your own course.
Okay, I like it. I did a presentation in Oklahoma, and I felt, okay, most of the time, if you're on the coast, people have a feeling for what chutzpah or chutzpah is. I thought, Oklahoma, it's going to be interesting when I ask this question. And one person said moxie, but he was from New England, so it made sense. And somebody with an Oklahoma twang said, it's gumption. I said, what a great word. Absolutely. So it's universal, this concept. So using that, I decided, can I create a model around chutzpah that will work and help others the way I've been able to benefit from it? Okay, Mike Burns not here today. That's his Corvette, obviously. But what we're going to cover today, I like starting with an agenda. We'll discuss persuasion and selling, critical skills that some of us have, we might be able to develop further. But again, my key here is bringing this back to your organization. Bringing this back to the people who assist you in making your organization successful. Strategy and reality. What I call the big picture, and I say I call it, but a lot of people think in terms of this, what's this big picture that drives us? And then the chutzpah rules, which hopefully will make it more memorable for you. At any point, I know we have a large group, but feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. Yes?
Do we get a copy of these?
I can get them. I don't have them, but I can get these for you. Absolutely. Dennis has been so great. We're going to arrange everything through Dennis so that you do benefit from the slides. Assuming you like the slides. I mean, it's too early to tell.
Just helps with note taking.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if there's anything else, any other questions, seriously, it's about as informal as we're going to get. Ancient history. Communication. From the beginning of time, people have developed tools to enable themselves to communicate with others. Close by, at a distance, whatever it was that was appropriate for the time. So I want to take a look at some of these ancient tools. Okay, this is from roughly 20, 21 years ago. Okay? This device on the left. Anybody know what that was?
I have one.
You have one? What is it?
Newton.
Newton, right, it's a message pad,
Yeah.
right? Okay. JVC video camera. I had my son, who again, now out of college, he was probably about a year when I bought one of those, not knowing the benefits I get in terms of the weightlifting, and carrying that around. The computer, early Mac, I believe.
Yep.
That cell phone, which also was able to heat a small pizza, if you put it next to it. A little bit change in technology on that side. For those who think that, hey, you know, it's our generation that brought about these instant photographs, we were technologically advanced with that Polaroid.
They're doing that.
Yeah, for some. For people who've been in a coma for 20 years, absolutely, that is big time. The Walkman, one of the first, not an attempt, because that was a very popular product, but being able to make your music portable and take it with you, so that you could, on a hike, run off a cliff using one of those, the way people do now. And why was it yellow? Anybody know? Easier to spot the body from a distance, if you went over. And then, of course, a digital watch and a pager. Okay, so this is, in 20 years' time, that truly is ancient history. This era of like, what has in essence happened to communication tools? That's basically it. A phone like this does everything that people 20 years ago had to go with multiple devices for. And it affects how we relate to each other. We're also, almost like a society that's more flexible, which leads to the iPhone 6 being able to bend. So they built that feature in, inadvertently or not. And very briefly, a commercial message. So for the Samsung people who like their piece, I just thought this was so clever when it came out. Then you probably appreciate it on the branding side. Okay, the great advantage of something like the device on our hip or in our purse or in our pocket is immediate communication. Something hits us, we can share it. There's also a cautionary tale potentially with that. So this is one of the most text intensive slides I have, well, 2 in a row. But in essence, I think everybody can read this, and I hate reading, but in essence, you have a sales communication, business to business, and as you can see, I sincerely appreciate you hanging up on me. Not a good start. Resident of San Francisco, I'm really disappointed that you won't give me the time of day. I have lots of friends who are active on social media, and I'm going to make sure they know what you and the people who run Sauce, which is a restaurant in San Francisco, are about. Then he ends it in a nice way, go Giants. So you can see there's still that attempt to establish rapport. And this is from Andy. Andy, as you might imagine, is no longer employed. He wasn't when I first pulled this off the web. He worked for a company called Groupon. So he was trying to basically make a sale and didn't get the response he wanted. So the danger of immediate communication is sometimes you don't have the chance to look back and say, should I press send on this or should I wait? Well, the response, which I think is appropriate in this case, he had a chance to think about his response. I've edited it slightly, but basically it's, you have no right to my time. Your company, which by the way a lot of people can't stand, just doesn't have access to me. In essence, you have to earn it. And just calling me and threatening me is not the way to earn my business. So my point here with this is that one should be a little more careful about how we use these communication tools. Just because they're there doesn't mean we should necessarily be taking full advantage. Let's talk a little about sales skills. Are they really different today than they were years ago? Has anybody here considered himself or herself to be primarily a salesperson or person of persuasion first? Okay, got a couple hands up. Among the top things you have to do as an entrepreneur in your business, you have to sell. What types of changes? Well, actually, I'm not going to answer that yet. I took my, well, ideal sales profession, Best Buy, looking at ways to make, to generate more sales for lower cost. Stuck with the problem in that people were using their stores as what?
Test out products.
A place to test products and then go to the web and order them. And salespeople, for the most part, were never around when you needed them. So they tested, or began testing, these vending machines. And for years, my work in the restaurant industry, I've had a number of restaurateurs, the owners, the GMs, say to me, God, I wish I had a vending machine, or my sales, my servers are just like a vending machine. They don't promote something else. They basically go there, can I take your order? And that's the end of that conversation, that relationship. So as we struggle to try and find solutions to remain competitive, decrease certain costs while maintaining profitability, automation is one easy thing to look at. It doesn't apply to most of our businesses, because in most of our businesses, we need to relate to people. And that's where the persuasion skills are going to come in handy. How do you view, or what are some of the things that are most critical for a salesperson or for yourself in a selling role? What types of things do you feel you have to get accomplished? This is the audience participation time. So
Make a connection.
make a connection.
Establish a pain point.
Establish a pain point, okay. Others? Asking the question a lot of times, these are some of the answers I've come up with, or that other people have come up with. Obviously, it's about building relationships. If you go into an office, you're selling, and you're unable to build a relationship, people, all things being the same, are more likely to do business with others that they like. That's obvious. Sometimes there's product demonstration. Become efficient at that side. Explain the features. of your product. Okay? All things that we'd agree with. Translate those features into benefits, which suddenly takes you into a higher level of sales. If you're just selling based on features, you've lost. It's taking the features that are relevant to the client or prospect and showing how they benefit. That's what makes the difference. It's not, we have dual control heating and cooling systems in this car, so in the back, your kids can set their own piece. It's, you will benefit because the kids won't be nagging you to change the setting. They're going to have it under control. Again, these things are not new, and I'm sure everybody here is at least somewhat aware of this. Sometimes the salesperson is engaged in getting the prospect to try the product. Okay? Another potentially important piece, leave the competition. How often do we walk into a prospect that isn't already using a similar product from a competitor? And then the challenge becomes much more difficult. It's not, hey, we can fill this, this need for you. It's, well, we have to replace how that need is being filled because we can do it better or relieve additional pain points, getting to the point. Personal service, salespeople have to express that, you know, part of the reason you should be going with my company is because I am here for you and we have exceptional customer service. Again, establishing the personality side. And then, of course, showing a return on investment if appropriate. Again, nothing brilliant at all about this. These are things that everybody's been telling me for, frankly, for years. So we have this old versus new piece. I guess I'll call it my first job. Growing up in Queens. Supermarkets did not have parking. Basically, you would walk to the supermarket and carry home the bags. I was probably about 9 years old. And it wasn't a real job because I wasn't paid by the supermarket chain, but I'd go to the supermarket that was closest, and I'd ask people if they needed help carrying their bags back. Real simple thing. Features that I had where I was, you know what, I'm hardworking, I'm strong, and I'm not hungry. So the idea being hardworking, I'll be able to help you with your bags. Strong, I'll carry them all, and the third piece, not hungry, I won't be eating your stuff as we go to your place. Now you can't imagine allowing a kid to go out and do that in today's environment. Like a 9-year-old going back to somebody's house, a stranger's house. And today if we were doing it, there'd be an app, a Boober or something where a car would pull up, and the kid would get out. The driver would remain in the car and say, here, let me move your bags to the car. But I learned from an early age that there are some things you don't say, and other things you can say. And fortunately, there was a bigger kid who helped in my training on that side. Okay. We're good?
Finally, you're here.
Traffic.
Welcome.
Playoffs today. Who knew?
Who knew?
Sorry about that. I'm Judd.
You're good. Jay?
Judd.
Judd, okay.
Come over
Nice
from
to meet you.
DC.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. All right, so this old versus new side. Used to be, when I was first professionally trained in sales, and it was a Xerox selling skill, professional selling skills course, it was about communicating features and benefits. So we're going back to my days at GTD Corporation, which is no more. And that was the latest. This wasn't even their first course, it was Professional Selling Skills 2. So I knew I was in the advanced class. It was about features and benefits. Taking the features, turning them into benefits, that's how we learn to close. Today, in this era of immediate information, when features and benefits are worthless because your prospect can immediately get on the web and see how you compare to the competition, probably find a chart that says, okay, they have all this, let's see, Nissan has this, Toyota has this, Honda has this, I have the features, I already understand my benefits. This no longer works for most of us. Obviously, it depends on the type of business you're in. If you're a commodity, it's frequently price-based, with a little piece of, you're already doing business with our company on these other non-commodity items, why don't you make it simple for yourself and use this for this? Okay. So, in this age of immediate communication, we cannot sell that way. We actually haven't been able to sell this way for a couple of decades, since that earlier slide showing those communication tools. So what is it that makes the difference?
Relationships.
Relationships is one piece. Contributing towards creating value in more than just the features or even the benefits, but in everything that you do is about your company. If I were to ask individually, what's the value that your company provides, that separates, that differentiates you from everybody else? what might you answer? Again, we're in the audience participation phase.
Well, for me, it's professionalism in a construction world where it's just rampant with the lack of professionalism. So, and we care.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who really just don't care
So
in my industry.
the professionalism, which is also, I'd say, service. We claim that we're more professional, we provide a higher level of service. Do you run across the difficulty that everybody in your business, and everybody in all of our businesses, has service up there, exceptional service, as
It's
one
the
of those things?
perception of service versus actually,
Versus
because I would
actually,
say any of us would answer that question, or anyone in anyone. If you took a segment of businesses, they're all going to say the same thing, but who really does it as opposed to who thinks they do it,
absolutely.
doesn't get across the finish
So
line.
let's take a look at service and say, how do you differentiate yourself on service? Is it even possible?
Ours is trusting relationships in the service.
Uh-huh.
So it's, we operate on trust.
And what does your business do for people who may not?
Environmental consulting.
Okay. Okay, so you operate on trust, and the service is proven over time. Do you think, relative to your competition, that people know you for service?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts on creating value?
Transparency for us, so we just show it. And that's something that our competitors either choose not to do or can't. They don't have the technology to do it. So we just
They claim it, but they can't do it.
correct.
Okay,
For us, it's creating win-win.
okay. And how do you do that?
So I serve a client who ultimately hires us, and then the third party who's paying us. So I have two people I'm answerable to. So it's creating value, providing service to both,
And by the
using
way-
our experience,
Mhm.
both positive and
So,
negative.
so it sounds like we're all striving for higher levels of service. And that in some cases, we've certainly achieved it. Without a doubt, it's doable. Okay, if we think about retail, one name typically stands out for service. Not that a lot of retailers don't provide exceptional service, but who is it that when you think service
Apple.
comes to mind? Apple is one,
Nordstrom's.
Nordstrom's. Apple is also known for something else. When you think of another criteria or category, technology, innovation. But the service side, it is possible to differentiate, to stand out from the crowd. It's a question of how we get there. So how do you create value? Service being one piece. You know, it's interesting. I'm reminded of the story that Vern actually told. One of the times I've seen him speak. Southwest Airlines used to be known for price and fun. They were the low-cost carrier. When they got started, they weren't pricing their flights to compete with other airlines. They were competing with bus routes. That's how they did it. Today, no longer the case on the price side, but they're still fun, and they're also emphasizing the service side, considerably more have been as they saw their prices rise. They've also been profitable for basically forever. Even during the typical airline downswings, upswings, roller coaster ride in profitability, they've managed to do it.
But they also bought fuel ahead of time, didn't they? Like
Fuel, that's
futures?
right. Great
So-
judgment. They locked in fuel prices before that change. They also have other things they do. Anybody know what it is? Typically the same airplane. They don't have multiple categories of planes, so maintenance is easier, both from a parts standpoint. So really a lot of strategic thinking in advance. When they started out, they also went to second-tier airports. That's starting to change a little, which in my mind is one of the reasons why pricing is going up. Because when you start offering these additional services, your costs increase. Retail, you look at typical retail versus a Costco or Price Club from years ago. If you didn't bring a box with you, you were carrying everything in your shopping cart or in your, you would have hired me when I was 9 to help you carry that stuff back to your car.
It's not directly retail, but it also comes to mind as the Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton
Okay,
from a service perspective.
explain more from your experience.
They bend over, they don't say no, they bend over backwards. It's where let me call you by your name a dozen times before, every time I interact with you, or makes you feel wanted. You don't mind spending money. There's value there because you feel special.
Yeah, completely agree. So the Sir Keller, he's the founder of Southwest. He gets a letter from a woman who's expressing her displeasure at this fun atmosphere. I felt that when the flight attendant talked about safety, there were too many jokes. People were chattering, and flying is a serious business, and I don't think this is appropriate. And I'm not going to fly with you again until this changes. Herb had a 3-word response that, to me, is famous. It was, "We'll miss you." I'm not changing our culture. Our culture works for our customers. So, how do you create value? Exceptional service, without a doubt. Just because everybody claims service is no reason to not strive for it, and then do things that really do separate yourself. How do you provide exceptional service? Numerous ways. Some of the things that people don't necessarily think about. Advocacy. When your customers, your clients feel that you are really working on their behalf, either by getting them better pricing, terms, research, which gets into knowledge. If you know on the environmental consulting side that legislation is pending, and you have a client who might be on the other side of that legislation, to be able to go in and say, look, it's not an issue now, but you may want to start thinking in this way, and this is what I've come up with to help you. That differentiates you on the service side, and differentiates you. And it's possible to do that across almost any business. Advocating for a client, efficiency. The more efficient you can make your client, the better that client looks among his or her peers, his or her supervisors. And that's a lot of what we try and do. If on the wealth planning side, someone's coming in saying, look, I really don't know, I have some ideas, I've been doing reading, being able to bring them a wealth of knowledge in advance of them asking, but once you have a full understanding of where they're headed, they may not even know all their needs, but that's where our expertise comes in. We're able to say, have you thought about this, or this is new, can I take a moment to explain it to you, and then we'll see if it's relevant for you. There's a way, again, to differentiate yourself and create the value that your competitors are not creating. Questions?
I would say back to advocacy, even when it doesn't pertain to your business to theirs, if you know something about their business that affects them across different areas. So I'm frequently reading Wall Street Journal articles that don't belong, that have anything to do with my business, but has something to do with theirs, and I'll forward it to them. So
what is your business?
I sell commercial office furniture, so
okay.
I have a furniture dealership.
Okay.
So I'm into all my clients. I'm on a higher level. I'm dealing with the owners and the principals, and I'm trying to help them out in other ways other than just what I can provide them with the furniture.
That's a great point.
So you become a resource in other ways.
Become a resource not just from your product lines, but from, hey, I understand what you're doing, and are you aware that this may impact you? Well, I'm sure you've seen it. Now you can caution it. I'm sure you've seen this, but in case you haven't, this is a great article in the Wall Street Journal that might apply to you. It's a lot better than saying, look, I know you read comic books and not the journal, but let me tell you what I read.
But isn't that just a touch point? Isn't that a way to be of service or to separate yourself from everybody else?
And that gets into exceptional service and creating value. Now, I've said that this program is also about enabling your employees, the people you work with, to create more value. So part of the idea here is for you to be able to go back and teach them, integrate into their mode of thinking that whatever you do with a customer, are you creating value for us, for yourself, for the company, or are you just going through the motions? Are we just like every competitor? You're in a very competitive field. Office furniture? God. And aside from all the office furniture dealers, new and used, there's the web. So to break through, it's all about, so many of our businesses, it's all about this creating value. Okay, understand preferences in communication and buying. This is a quick one, let me get all this on board. But basically, we all have preferences in how we receive information. For some of us, our preference, not that we don't receive it in multiple ways, but we have a preference. When dealing with a prospect or a client, to try and figure out what that preference is, can be the difference between being successful in the sale or persuading in some manner. People are typically visual. Some people love the slides, and they look at the slides second I switch. Other people are more auditory. They don't want to be distracted by pictures and text. They want to hear what I'm trying to say. And I have to try and gauge what their preference is when I'm speaking with them. If they say to me something to the effect of, you know, I'm listening, I can hear what you're talking about. That's a cue to me to start making my person-to-person presentation more auditory. If they're responding to printed brochures, or if they are responding to graphics I'm showing them on the web, then I know that I got to appeal to the visual side. The kinesthetic applies in certain situations. In a presentation like this, I know most of the people here want a mix of visual, auditory. Kinesthetic is my saying it's audience participation time. I want you getting involved. If you have a product, say software, training, and you can get people to try it. One of the first skills identified was demoing products, to actually touch and feel it. That makes a difference. If you have a culinary school, you're actually going to have people cooking, because that's part of the way they're going to learn. The taste and smell, if I'm in a restaurant, taste and smell fit in, because if I'm bringing a platter of steaming fajitas by a table next to the one that somebody else is sitting at, or somebody else is bringing it by, then those fajitas become part of the experience, part of the cue, and can influence what it is they're buying. And as far as taste, if you've ever been at a restaurant where the wait's long and people come out and a server comes out and is giving you small pieces of, in essence, appetizers as a gift for waiting, you remember that, and that's also part of the communication and buying signals that you can work on. Questions or thoughts? You also all have different styles. There are tests for these, for you to learn your own style if you haven't. Know your customers is also part of this communications piece. This is actually a description by a very successful company of what they offer to the customers and why it meets their needs. Handcrafted, local farm supporting, food culture changing, cylinder of deliciousness. Everybody figure out who this might be? I'll give you a hint in a moment. Come on, this is the big money.
Ice cream?
This is the,
Ice cream, no. But
Beer.
no, but no. Let's give us a shot here. Do we know who Steve Ells is? Okay, the next slide is going to give this away.
Chipotle.
Chipotle. Okay? In essence, you have a guy who started with one restaurant in Denver, and he was a chef. And he said, you know, I think what this niche needs is cilantro rice. Somehow, whatever he was doing, and that was a part of it, was a hit. I don't know when he expanded into the local farm supporting, but before long, he went from one store to roughly 8 stores, then got McDonald's interested, major cash infusion, they're up at 700 stores, buys it back, I believe, I don't know what the price was, and without a doubt, I can walk by a California tortilla and a Chipotle, my kids will only go into Chipotle unless I force them to go to Caltor, although I happen to prefer Caltor because the menu's a bit more varied. But they've touched into this psyche and this loyalty from their fans. And a lot of people believe it's because he understands his customer. He invests a lot in learning what it is they want and where they're tasting it. Some of the critical skills. Any golfers here? I can't stand it. But I play it because my wife loves it, but I'm not good. And one of the things I've learned about golf is there are so many different clubs to use and so many different positions. You drive, you hit long shots with your woods, you get out of the rough, and you have to learn how to use each club. But ultimately, people tell me it's what you do when you're putting that makes all the difference. That's, for so many people, the key to their success. Well, what are the critical skills for us? Product knowledge, and again, when I say us, think in terms of your employees. Are they really up to speed in all of these areas? Product knowledge should be the easiest because you know your product, but it also is nice for them to know the competition. Okay? Not because they're going to knock the competition if it comes up in a meeting or a sales call, but to be able to move the conversation through a questioning strategy, which I'll get to in a couple minutes, towards where you provide a better solution and you want your customer, your prospect, your client to come to that conclusion. Referrals and networking. We understand how critical that is. That's, to a large extent, what EO is about. Yes, it's form, which was actually my favorite part of EO when I was in it. But the networking was critical. I wanted the networking, and I didn't want to meet every insurance agent or real estate broker at a B&I meeting. I wanted to meet people who were having some of the same issues that I had, or could be a source for me. And these were all founders and owners of companies. That's what you guys are. Building rapport. Again, this is the old, not putting your foot in your mouth at some level, but being able to quickly pick up on cues and ask the right questions. More than just, oh, I see you have an Orioles banner on your desk or on the side of the desk. You an Orioles fan? Which basically every salesperson who comes in that room is going to see and say, hey, you an Orioles fan? So after a while, trust me, these clients get bored with that question. No, I'm not. My kid gave it to me. Why don't we get on to business? So how do you build rapport? Perhaps it's a question like, so God, Vice President of Purchasing in this industry, how did you arrive here? What was your path to this type of job? Just a sample question. People are more likely to respond to that question in a way that also helps establish building rapport, because one, it's personal, but two, people get that, well, there's some interest here, or there's, even if it's not real, but they're asking about how I got here. I'm going to share that. Handling indifference and objections. If we are trying to get a colleague to work with us on a project, we say, look, this is the deadline. Can you provide X by this certain date? Not even a client, I'm not thinking that way. I'm thinking colleagues now. He goes, well, I'll try. I really don't know. Versus, I can't do it because I have other priorities. From the moment we're born virtually, we start hearing objections. There was that great video on the web, which was this 3-year-old negotiating with his mother for a cookie. I don't know if you guys saw it. She's saying, you cannot have the cookie. He's going, no, you don't understand. It was adorable. He's going, I said no cookies today after dinner. No. Mom, you don't understand. He would not give up. I loved it because you basically have, he was probably older than 3 because the language is too good. Call him 5. He had something that had worked previously. So why abandon it just because he was getting an objection? On the whole, people we meet give up too quickly. There's an objection, a complete one, and they don't know how to handle it. How might you handle an objection to somebody who makes a statement about your product or service? Okay, forget the audience participation. We want an answer from me. The way I do it is I will phrase the objection, possibly rephrase it, make sure that I understand it, and then if it's something that's wrong, I'll offer proof that it's wrong. I say, so let me make sure I understand. You believe that mobile billboard advertising is actually more expensive for you and your business than radio or even cable TV. Bless you.
Thank you.
And if they say yes, then I say, well, let me show you these numbers. On a cost per basis, on our ability to target better than mass media, you're actually saving money. That can change the dynamic of the conversation. If what they're saying is legit, or you don't have this capability that your competitor has, he has a larger billboard screen on his vehicles than you do. I'll say, so let me understand. You say that this is particularly critical for you, right? Yes? Let me ask, what else is critical for you? Because at this point, I want to find out there's something that I'll be able to provide him with, and I want to see if I can weigh which is more important. Because I know my competition, I probably know certain things that they don't have. And I want to be able to introduce it, but I don't want to introduce it by just saying, well, did you know we can do the following? I want to use a questioning strategy to take me there. Other critical skills, we talked about questions a bit. Let's talk about it in more detail. Because sales are no longer made now, at least at our level, for the most part, by knowing our product, knowing the competition, and telling the prospect, this is what we do, it'll be perfect for you. We have a lot of clients in the business you probably know. That might be part of it, but it's not how the sales are made. How are they made? Questions. It's a strategy of asking questions to get the client to open up, because we can't make assumptions all the time about it. So what types of questions? We're all familiar with open and closed probes. So a closed probe, so I understand you've been in business now for 30 years. Yes, we have. End of that question, unless if they want to say we got started here and we did this because that feeling talking. Open probe might be, why did you get into this business? Gives you a chance to learn, well, the founders felt that this was an approach we should take because market was changing. Flash bulbs and cameras were going away, so they thought that cameras with built-in flashes made the most sense. And if we think that some of these things are ridiculous, let's think back to Kodak. At one point, one of the most respected companies and brands around, and they were too slow to move to digital cameras because they felt, you know, we have film that is the industry leader. People aren't going to use digital. They're not going to move there that quickly. They're going to stay with film because that's proven itself for the last how many decades. So those are the differences between the open and closed probes. Factual versus difficulties. Let's pick a company we haven't picked on yet. Anybody? Give me a. We know you drive direct mail. Okay. So a questioning strategy related to a client who maybe doesn't do direct mail because he or she doesn't understand the benefits yet. Might be. So let me ask you. You are trying to reach. What's the number of people in roughly in this zip code? They go, well, we've identified roughly 14,000 people that might make sense. Okay? Factual, you have a number with which to work with, creating a return on investment, things like that. The difficulties might be, well, how are you going about reaching them now, and what kind of difficulties are you facing? And the answer might be, well, we do some radio. And we also do some, we do the community supplements in the newspaper. Oh, well, from my perspective, it's like, this is good information because I have a sense of what radio is going to cost them. I have a sense of what it costs to do the print. And I also know that a lot of radio is wasted because it reaches people outside that marketing area, outside that desired target market. Even the local community things. Not going to be nearly as effective as it used to be because fewer people are reading print. Then you get into, if I want to reach people who are 50 and older, print might make sense. But if your target group is a different piece of generation, we're going to talk a bit about generational marketing in a couple minutes too. That's the wrong one. So there are factual questions versus what are the difficulties you're facing? How was your last campaign? Are you pleased with it? What were the results? Any other difficulties? Don't let them off the hook that quickly. This also applies, by the way, to generating new EO membership. A lot of what we're talking about. Okay, consequence and solution. Well, you told me that the last campaign didn't work as well for you as you wanted. Can you share with me, what were the consequences? What happened inside the company? Was there a big discussion about, hey, our numbers are low. What are we going to do next? Was anybody lose authority, or any reprimands going about because you missed your numbers so badly? If they're willing to talk about that, they're already starting to think about the pain, which came up earlier, and I'm going to address in a moment too. And then, I say consequence and solution. The key at this point is not to offer the solution. Hey, let me talk to you about my targeted direct mail campaigns that will reach all of those people you want. The households, if you're only interested in reaching people with 2 or more in a household, we can even set up our mailing to do that. We can be that finely targeted. Rather, the questions, at that point, the solution is, 1, do you see any solutions to that? Chances are, I wish we could target better, or I really don't. If that's where they come in, then, instead of, again, offering the solution is, well, if you could reach people through, say, direct mail, and eliminate the people in a single family, one person in the household, because your market is 2 or more for whatever the product or service is, would that be a benefit? Go, yeah, that would be. Isn't that what you do? That's where this progression takes you from what used to be a successful sales call, but no longer is, to one that would hopefully work for you. Okay, so we talked a bit about questions. Uncovering pain. Used to be uncover need. Now it's become uncover pain or a combination. And the reason is, not every client you have has pain. You know, I am perfectly good with my current vendor. Hard to uncover pain in a situation like that. Then maybe what you need to do is uncover need, which could be partially pain. There's a little bit of overlap into it. Well, is your current vendor, or even not even talking about the current vendor, but you can. Is your current vendor also able to do the following for you? Because again, this gets into where you know your competition better. A direct question, well, they're really not. You can do that. What's the additional cost? Actually, it's extremely competitive. I think you'll be pleased when you see the cost. So uncovering pain without a doubt, or need, I use it both interchangeably at times, critical on that side. Takes you to the negotiation side. I have, my house in Potomac is currently for sale. As soon as we get an offer, I know my wife will be ecstatic, and I'm going to be, now's when the negotiation starts. If the agent doesn't immediately say, take the offer, take the offer, there will be a negotiation. And then, of course, the ability to close the client, to look at an EO prospect, possibly that comes in, to get through all of this, and then leave the meeting without saying, when can we get you signed up? We have a new form going. But I'll tell you what, let us know when you're interested. We'll be back in touch with you, or however, call me with any questions. Closing skills is the last part of this on the persuasion business. Okay, any questions? Strategy and reality. Hopefully we're not going too quickly on this. The era of like. We spoke earlier about this era of like and the communication and the ability to send messages. It's also brought about an ability for people to express their thoughts on every imaginable subject. One of the best things about social media is that we all have a voice. One of the worst things about social media is those people don't deserve that voice. They are driving me crazy with these pictures and these inane comments on life, and I wish we could somehow stop it. The other thing that goes on, and we hate, is when people put negative reviews about our companies, our products, our services. And they can be completely unfair. We don't know what the basis is. If they had come to us, we could have corrected the problem. But once it's up, it's forever. Okay? So I like the way this guy handled it. He got a negative review for his meatball sandwich. And he decided, turn that into a positive. Come on in, try the worst meatball sandwich that this guy on Yelp ever had in his life. I would have been curious. I might not have tried the sandwich, I'll be honest, but I probably would have tried something because I would have been impressed by the guy's husband. Okay? Overcoming what we call clutter and fragmentation. We live in an age where the clutter is overwhelming. How do we prioritize all the information we get? How do we manage our time in these regards? So, monumental clutter. Years ago, easily a decade ago, there was a study that came out that said we're all exposed to at least 1 million messages a year. Since then, I've seen people raise that number, but there's so much clutter, our brain basically doesn't even recognize the great majority of these messages. So then the question becomes, which messages get through? If it's relevant or interesting in some way. It may not be relevant to my business or personal life, but it was an interesting, or portrayed, the advertising piece behind it was brilliant. I'm paying attention, even though it wouldn't have occurred to me that I need another oven in the house, or a toaster that does something different. And then the ones that seem to break through the most are the ones that have the impact for us. And that will change over time. Anybody buy a car in the last year? Okay, a couple of hands go up. Car buying is interesting. We might buy a car or lease every 3 to 6 years, or even more in some cases. After we buy, we don't see any of those commercials or ads or branding until we have a need again for another. Okay? So all those messages, and there are hundreds daily that are aimed at us, are meaningless. Our brain just shuts them out. But suddenly we realize, the brakes are bad, I'm up at 130,000 miles, shock absorbers are all gone, kids are bouncing their heads off the roof in the back. It's time to look at a car. Suddenly, these ads, these commercials make sense to us. This is the recency theory of advertising, or partially. It's need, but then recency, you hit the person with an ad or a message at the time the need is there. That's when it has the most impact. The ads are always out there. You can't always identify when they're going to buy a car. That's why targeted mailing sometimes can be a great way to reach people. If you can buy a list that says, these people have cars that are 80,000 miles or above, maybe they'd be over. That's who we're going to try and reach. How does it relate to us?
That would work on you. As you share, you have
Right.
very old.
I drive a 1992 Lexus SC400. It was the first year that sports car came out. I love the car. I see no need to replace it. But if it gets totaled, or if wheels start falling off on a regular basis, I probably will be open to some of these things. I'm more likely to pay attention when my wife needs a car. So, with more companies available, used to be we competed, some of us, we competed at a local level. If you're a restaurant, you had a restaurant, your competition probably, for the most part, was within a mile of where you were, depending on the type of food, of course. Could be 10 miles from where you were. But now, if you're thinking, I want crab cakes, and you realize you can order crab cakes over the web from some pretty good restaurants that are nowhere near you, suddenly that's a new level of competition that didn't exist. More companies, there are more regulations related to what we do, the environmental science side. My God, the hoops that people have to jump through are amazing. Being an expert in that area certainly helps, but even that changes daily. You never stop learning. Complexity, deals have become more complex. May involve more parties as well. People are starting to farm out more of what they're doing. The 4-hour work week. Great example of, hey, you focus on this and have other companies do the fulfillment for you. If you're starting a web-based or an e-commerce company, which my son is in the process of doing, and that was his model. That was his guy. So, what's critical is your time management. With all this going on, how can you efficiently manage your time? Time management skills, we probably all have, never bad to brush up and see what's out there. Your customers' time management. We spoke about this indirectly when we talked about how do you create value. Make your customer more efficient. That's what this is about. It's not just time management. It's too easy a thing for a speaker to say, hey, manage your time better. If you manage your time better and can figure out a way to help your clients manage their time better, boy, you have a relationship that can last. Okay, generational marketing. You're all familiar with it at some level. What I like is this McDonald's picture. I just thought it was so clever. You would not find the greatest generation, 4 people in their 80s, putting this car around themselves thinking, this would be a blast to go through the drive. We recognize the differences and we respond accordingly. So when we think about your customers and generational marketing, my favorite slide of all time, showing the stages, is this one. Your client, as a youngster, starts out with a bottle. And maybe it's formula, maybe it's breast milk, but there are limits to what that client is buying. Moving to the next stage, which is the soda, the Coke bottle, then on to the alcohol, and then sadly, unfortunately, we're looking at a bag of fluids in the hospital. But in a way, looking at that and how it represents the generations, it gives us an idea of there are differences and we need to take these differences seriously. In some cases, if you're selling consumer-wise. But even if you're not, if you are selling business to business, I know if I find myself selling to somebody in his late 20s or early 30s, there are some ways that I'm probably not going to reach him by calling. I'm not going to reach him by phone. Might reach that person, him or her, via LinkedIn. Okay? Because they don't answer the phone, and it's impossible to break through that voicemail system. Generational marketing, we have a sense for even the millennials. The oldest one's going to be 35 in a couple of months. That's not a youngster. Yet the millennials are known for the people who are going to be fixing your computer. You have an issue at home with, I can't get this thing to work, call the 12-year-old down the street. My wife's uncle turned 80. Kid's got him an iPad. I'm in the room, he's sitting there with the iPad on his lap, my daughter's there. Daughter looks at him trying to be 80-year-old. How do you relate to an 80-year-old when you're 14? She goes, Twitter? He goes, well, I used to, but now I'm on medication. So it's no longer a big issue. So the words we use have different meanings. Understanding that makes us better if we use that information. Okay, what are some of the biggest issues? I'm going to put these all on. Trust. I don't care what generation you are from now. We don't trust advertising. We don't trust marketing. We don't trust salespeople. We haven't trusted politicians for quite some time. So who do we trust, or how do we reach a level of trust? When we're calling on people, trying to persuade, the trust side, how do you break through that? Any quick answers on that?
Doing what you say you're gonna do, integrity.
Okay, and if you don't even get that far with them,
Show empathy.
what, sorry?
Show empathy.
Empathy will do it, but the key thing for calling on somebody new, I'll get back to LinkedIn for a second. I'm looking for prospects. I want to see who they know that I know. I want to get a referral in there, because a referral breaks through so many of the barriers right up front. What about have it now? We are a society that doesn't want to wait. We can think back to the mortgage crisis that contributed directly to the economic situation we're still in today, 14 years later. Okay? The mortgage crisis is based on the concept that people shouldn't have to wait to save up a deposit for their home. They should be able to get in now because there are other societal reasons related to home ownership. So that, along with credit cards that let you spend to a tremendous limit, unfortunately you're financing it, created a culture of, I don't want to wait. I want to take that vacation. I want to buy that house. I want, and I want it now. One of the things, or trends, we call it a trend, it's been here for a while now, but it's not going away, as we said. Privacy? No longer. Fortunately, we have the government to protect our privacy, and there won't be any issues there because they're looking out for us. I call this zigzag, this next piece. What do I mean by zigzag? Who saw Moneyball? What was Moneyball about, in essence? Thanks. I mean, we have the story, but what was the message you might have taken from it?
Data.
Big data, use of data. Other things in there? That was pretty much it. You had the challenge with the Oakland Athletics, which in Major League Baseball is a small business. Their market size is small, their payroll relative to other teams, a fraction. They're always one of the lowest in terms of team payroll. Yet they still have to compete for talent. And they decided, using data analysis that hadn't been done before, in essence, big data as well, to find correlations between types of players doing certain types of things. They said, you know, we may not be able to afford Giambi, but we can afford a guy who's a sixth of the price, but whose stats are so close, but has fallen under the radar. And his stats might be, they might not be looking at home runs, but they're looking at on-base percentage and how that contributes to the team. So instead of thinking, like every other Major League Baseball club did, we need a home run hitter, they were thinking we need people who get on base more often than not. Using that, they identified talent. This small market team hasn't won a World Series for a while, but they have made it to the playoffs with a way below average payroll, more than was said earlier, my New York Mets, who've typically had a much higher payroll and couldn't finish at 500 now. I think it's 6 or 8 years in a row. Advanced data analysis. There's another piece at the end of the film, if you saw it, that struck me. The general manager, who basically implemented this for the A's and was successful. Even as people were saying, this is a bad idea, this is not going to work, you're going to lose your job and the team's going to frankly fail. He proved them wrong. And then he met with the Boston Red Sox all the way on the other side of the country. And they offered him a considerable, I think it was like a 5-fold increase in his salary. So a ridiculous sum of money to take what he had done and bring it to the Red Sox. In the end, he chose to stay with the A's, which to me is about happiness versus money, and sometimes things that we all, at some level, face. Okay, so Moneyball. If we think about the zigzag, there's the expression, the world is run by C students, not professors. How many of you have heard the story of the, I think it was a Yale business school student who turned in a paper, something brand new, and I believe he got a C on the paper because the professor said, you know, it's an intriguing idea, but this would never work. What's the story? What company? FedEx. In essence, he said, you know, we have a mail system, but I believe that businesses will pay to ensure that their important documentation and packages are available at a predetermined time, not be subject to the ebbs and flows of the mail system. That was the beginning of FedEx. Well, there are a lot of stories like that. A guy who decides, you know, the expert, the professor told me I was wrong, but I think I'm right. I don't care what he says. I'm going to go and take this to the next level. These are older, but we have newer examples as well. Darryl Zanuck, anybody know who that was? Basically, famous movie producer. When TV was introduced, the early stages where you had a TV box that was giant and a screen that was this big, almost the size of an iPhone 6. He was saying people are not going to abandon the movies to watch this box. Just not going to happen. Well, of course he was wrong, as people were wrong when they predicted radio would fail as soon as TV was available. Radio has its market, TV has its market, and the movie theaters have their own market. 1962, Decca Records. Anybody know what that failure was about? They got some demo tapes from a band, and they listened to it and they said, you know, this guitar stuff, this band, nah, they're just not going to make it. Who was the band?
Beatles.
The Beatles. Absolutely. They turned down what became, I mean, even today, people know the Beatles. I don't care your age. 1968 Business Week, another business publication, the experts, they research, they know their stuff. What did they say in 68? Anybody know? They said that the American automobile market was the best, and no country, no other group could ever compete with it. And it's just about the time that people started saying, oh, the quality on this new car sucks. I closed the door and look, the hubcap's popping off. Open things up for competition. 1996, person trying to publish a book, rejected by 12 publishers. The 13th publisher basically said, okay, I got this book, let me give it to my daughter. I'll let her read it. It's a kid's story. It was Harry Potter. Okay? You want to talk about a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, if you think about it, what kind of, again, chutzpah, what kind of hey, didn't you hear me the first time? This isn't going to work. Does it take to continue on beyond that? To know that I have a solution. It has value. Okay, you're supposedly an expert, but just because you don't see it doesn't mean the next person won't see it. So zigzag is about, you run into an obstacle. Find a way around the obstacle. Change what you're doing. Adapt. Steve Ballmer, who we all know as president of Microsoft, what did he say in 2007? It's the introduction of the iPhone. He said, people will never buy it because there's no keypad. Now he's the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, I think. He's retired from Microsoft. But again, people who we respect, who have industry knowledge, don't always get it. Questions. Some of the new things. How many of us would have thought a couple years back, you know, I think we can create an international taxi replacement service using the smartphones. How many knows, or how many, are you crazy? That's not going to work. Think of all the regulations, all the different cities and municipalities that regulate their cab service, their taxi service. Think about the medallions in New York City that can cost $800,000 for a cab. There's an infrastructure that you will not be able to replace. Yeah, right now they have, I think, a bigger valuation than Portugal. I don't even know what it is anymore. So, Dick Fosbury, anybody familiar? Again, we have a perception that there are limits to how far we can go, either in our business, with an idea, physically, sports-wise. Dick Fosbury was a high jumper. And at the time, all the coaches taught a specific style of high jumping. And the best in the world all peaked at a certain level. He was average. He wasn't even one of the best in the world. He just couldn't get to that level. He figured, pretty much this is going to be my last year doing this. What do I have to lose? I'm going to try something different. He tried, instead of going straight over, going over backwards. And suddenly these records were being broken. Because, again, he decided not to listen and pursue something different. Again, thinking about our companies, thinking about the people we work with. If we can get them thinking differently, not necessarily allow them to make a lot of these big decisions themselves up front, but throw those crazy ideas out. Don't just accept things the way they are. The company benefits. Because sooner or later you're going to come across an idea that saves you 6 figures here because of the way you're purchasing. or adds 7 figures in revenue to a product line you never considered. Okay, the big picture piece. Okay, purpose. And by purpose, I talk about almost the really big picture. We're entrepreneurs. We're professionals. We go into work and we have issues that frequently our employees can't relate to. For most of us, we've personally guaranteed the bank loans on our business. Until you reach a certain size, you're not going to get anybody's help on that. You personally guarantee. Your house is collateral for your ability to keep things moving correctly. And people have different purposes. For some, you might reach a point where, I'm at the stage where I love learning arts, or I want to be involved in developing a new medical technology. There's a wonderful video also I saw on the internet. It brought tears to my eyes. First time a hearing impaired child had hearing aids implanted. Didn't know what sound was. They put it in, they turned it on, the parents videoed it. And it was like, he looked up, and this smile on his face. So you think about purpose, and think about the things you can do. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as that. But what's your purpose? It sounds like Avenue Q if you've seen it. But this is where I'm heading somewhere. Finding meaning. Anybody know who Viktor Frankl was? Any guesses? Now with the picture. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. He was also an Auschwitz survivor. Okay? He lost his wife there. As a psychiatrist, he had a chance to observe and come to conclusions about which of his fellow prisoners were more likely to survive that experience versus those who, in his mind, they weren't going to survive. It was going to be them. They were going to die in the camp. How do you do that? What can you observe that makes the difference? And he basically said that you have this environment where every freedom is taken away. You don't eat what you want, when you want. You're woken up. You're taken out in the cold. Slave labor, if you're lucky enough not to be sent to the gas chambers immediately. And he said, there is luck which you can't impact. If you were in the wrong line or you were selected by somebody, it doesn't make a difference how healthy you were gone. But for those who weren't selected and bad luck didn't interfere, and by the way, you talk about luck, Jim Collins in his last book has a whole section on luck that surprised me when I read it and saw him speak, and it's worth looking at. He said, so all your freedoms are gone. The last of our freedoms as concentration camp prisoners was we could choose our attitude relative to the circumstances around us. We could look at the attitude and say, we're doomed, it's over. And it was, if that was the attitude at the time. But for those that took a different attitude, suddenly there was a chance. What else did he find? Well, one, he says, people, and we don't have to be in concentration camps. We can be ill. We can come down with an illness that some people believe is terminal, and then others make remarkable recoveries from. We can be in a situation where the bankers and the creditors are at our door, where we haven't made our numbers. We're business owners. I mean, there are lots of reasons to be depressed in a bad economy. Right? So only by looking to the future is his argument, or his observation, can you get ahead.
You have to be careful, though, because there's POWs that mentioned other POWs that didn't make it because they were looking at this, we'll be out by Christmas, we'll be out by July.
An exact point that actually he makes in the book. He says, among the people who said weren't going to make it, he says, those who said the Allies will be here by Christmas time. I know it, I've heard it. That deadline would come just as the POWs. That deadline would come, and then it was over. Their world crashed, and they didn't make it. But what are the things that helped those people survive, and actually might have bearing on us? He identified 5 of them. One was spiritual beliefs. Doesn't mean you have to be religious, but to believe that there is something out there, that we're here for a purpose, helped people. And in some cases, if these were Jewish prisoners in the camp, it was the knowledge that, hey, do you know, the holiday of Rosh Hashanah is coming up. It's a new year, maybe it'll be a better year. Having spiritual beliefs, one of the things that help. Acts of kindness, almost like that bumper sticker, random acts of kindness. For a prisoner to share something small, or to get up from the stone he was sitting on because another prisoner was too weak. These small acts of kindness. And we do acts of kindness all the time. But they seem to have a lot more impact on us when done for us when things are bad, when things look the bleakest. Okay. What else? Images of loved ones. They didn't have physical images, but if in their minds they could still conjure up the images of family, spouse, partner, that helped them. It gave them purpose. A grim sense of humor. This was the one that intrigued me the most. How do you have a sense of humor when you're a POW in Vietnam? When you're a prisoner in a concentration camp? When you are in ISIS-controlled territory? People can still laugh about very grim things. Black humor, right? Oh my God, this guy. Whatever the humor is, something that gets people to smile made a big difference for them. And then finally, what he called the healing beauties of nature. To get through a very rough winter and see that first blade of grass come up made a difference. These combined created a purpose for surviving. He survived. And I guess in his mind, after he wrote his book, which was in, I think, the late 40s, early 50s, but it's still available, it's a classic, it became almost its own school of psychiatry, and he was a trained psychiatrist. It's not a thought that was unique to him. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. If there is that purpose, there's a better likelihood that you will get through the issues surrounding you. Okay, I call this, what's wrong with the equipment? I saw the picture and I loved it. So the concept here is we all have issues in, let's keep it to the company side, in the company. And something happens and we ask a question. So looking at this picture, somebody can say, boy, I wonder what happened with that equipment, without looking at the obvious, and therefore asking a different question. Why didn't the guy move this out of the way? Okay, we would not have had the issue. So from our standpoint, if we have, or if we start asking questions differently, if the problem is that revenue is down, for a lot of us the first thought might be, what's wrong with the sales team? Why aren't they performing? And if you approach it this way, you already have a set of conclusions. The conclusions might be, VP of sales just isn't performing, replace it. Get rid of some of the sales team. Take the bottom 20% and get rid of it. We need to modify the comp plan. They're always complaining they're not making enough money. Training, invest money in training, other things we can do to improve the sales team. But yet, if we ask a different question, new question might be, why isn't revenue as high as projected? What types of different conclusions might you reach? Perhaps it's, our product isn't as competitive as it used to be. Competition has introduced some new things and lowered prices. That's a product issue. Maybe it's our distribution channel. The way you ask the question brings about an answer that may answer the question, but it's not the right question. So I'm encouraging you, when you run across a problem, to not jump at the first question. How do we solve this revenue problem? But rather see what questions are bigger that we should be looking at as well, until we know that it's a sales problem. Okay, entitled to losing. I've done a couple of sports analogies, down to the last one basically. Anybody know who Armando Galarraga and Jim Joyce? Probably the people that cut out and went to the Orioles game would answer this one. Armando Galarraga was a relatively average pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. Baseball, perfect game is very rare. In roughly 100 years, consider the modern era of baseball, I think there have been 21, 22 perfect games. That's defined as the pitcher who faces 27 batters in a game, getting all 27 out. There's not a walk, a hit by pitch, an error, a base hit, none of this. Extremely rare. Average pitcher, Armando Galarraga, early in the season, night in where was it? They were playing, I don't remember who they were playing, but might have been a home crowd at Detroit. They're at the 26th consecutive outing. Small crowd, but they're on the verge of seeing history. And Galarraga, who's been an average pitcher, is this close to making history. Now we think about athletes. I don't know about you, but how many people think that they are pampered, overpaid? Have always gotten things their way because they were athletic stars as kids, so they shone in high school. They were the stars in college. people wrote their papers for them. Okay? How often do we see a baseball player getting mad and kicking the dirt or cursing at an umpire? And it has to be bleeped out on TV. Well, this is the 27th out. The last batter hits a ground ball towards the first baseman. First baseman has to run a bit towards second to pick up the ball. It's the pitcher's job to go cover first base, which you can see in the photo. He was there in time. The throw was there in time. The crowd erupts. Only problem, what happens?
The ump called him.
Umpire calls him
Safe.
safe. Umpire was wrong, but he said he's safe. These are the days before replays. Guy's safe. That's the end. Now, at this point, you might have expected somebody to say, "You're wrong. You're crazy. You're blind. You shouldn't be in this job." Whatever. Colorado said, "Oh, I was here. The ball came to me. It was safe." Took the ball, got the next batter out. Afterwards, the umpire is in his locker room. He's watching a replay because the replays were there. It's televised. Looks like, God, I blew it. This young man pitched a perfect game, and I took it away from him. Right. So what happens? And this is what we call humility, the ability to accept responsibility and forgive. Next day, umpire's still in the game. Galarraga brings the lineup, even though he's not playing that day. It's all been taken away. It's in all the newspapers and all the social media. You can find that umpire blows it. He brings the lineup card out to the umpire. The umpire takes it and says, "I blew it. I'm sorry. It was my fault." Now, a lot of people might have said, "It's all right. You blew it. You screwed things up. I don't know how you can ever make this right. You can't." Colorado says, "Nobody's perfect." Gives him a tap on the shoulder and says, "It is what it is." Kind of an understanding that there are a lot worse things than not getting that perfect game. If anything, he may have gotten more press because I think he might even be out of baseball today. Because I said he was an average pitcher. He was traded to multiple teams. Never approached this again. Okay, so what do we learn from this? Humility, responsibility. If we can, for our colleagues, for employees, accept responsibility when things go bad, it does tremendous things to improve how they view you as a leader. So it's both, I'm responsible, that didn't work, we're going to move on, we're going to try something different. Okay, everybody? Let's put our efforts behind this. And then forgiveness is the second time. Because undoubtedly, all of us have had things done to us that may have been wrong, handled improperly. We can hold on to them, or we can forgive and move on. Coincidentally, these two guys then co-authored a book together called Nobody's Perfect. I don't think it sold many copies, but it was a clever approach. So, let's take a quick look at what we covered today. We're coming to the end. Salesforce, roles have changed. We need to understand and accept them. What are some of the critical skills that have changed? Well, certainly handling objections, identifying the pain or the need, as we discussed. Strategy versus reality. Time is precious, both for us and for our clients. And if we can become more efficient for us and our clients, we are now the trendsetter. We differentiate ourselves to create more value than our competition. The big picture, find your reason. The reason can change, but find your reason, because that's what gets you through the tough times. And we went through the chutzpah rules. Now, for those of you who have been paying attention, you're thinking to yourself, whoa. Didn't happen, you didn't talk about the chutzpah rules. Or I somehow missed it, but I basically was here, I paid attention, I saw that people are actually listening for the most part to what I'm saying. We did go through the chutzpah rules. So let me show you how. I said this is a model for you, but important also to bring to your employees, to your colleagues. It's your company. Let's add some values. The first one is create value for your customer and your company. Have your employees work on the idea that what value am I creating when I call on this client? Handle objections. Ask questions. Learn to do that, because you're not going to learn if you don't ask the questions. And you're not going to learn if you give up immediately when you hear an objection. If you say, it goes, well, I'm not interested in speaking with you, which a lot of people just do out of habit right now. They get calls from so many vendors who want to work with them, so many providers of service and product. First thing they say is, I'm covered, because that eliminates the people who can't sell. It's the people who say, I know you're probably covered, but if you have a couple minutes and you can meet with me for half an hour, perhaps there's some things that would be beneficial to you. You don't give up that easily. What's the you? Uncover the downside to the current solution. And that's either the pain or the need. Talked about that in detail. The time, it's precious for you. We have too many things on our plate. Too many journals or articles to read. Too many vendors calling us because they want our time. Too many employee complaints. How do we handle it? Keep in mind that your time is precious, but the people you work with, the people you're trying to persuade, their time is precious too. Zigzag. Create your own path. When there's a barrier in front of you, that shouldn't stop. Too many barriers are put up by people who are the experts. You pay a consultant a fortune, and he tells you, don't go down this path. Maybe the consultant's right, maybe the consultant isn't. Maybe what you have is some true out-of-the-box thinking, or you've identified a niche that they just can't see because they're asking the wrong questions. Purpose, the P. The purpose in your life is your ultimate assembly. That's what will get you through things. We spoke about Moneyball. Money wasn't his purpose. That's why he stayed with the Oakland A's. Building a team, creating more value in an environment where he didn't have the resources that his competition had. The other Major League Baseball teams, that was his purpose. Didn't have as great a relationship with his family, but you know, you pick your purpose. At the end of the movie, his relationship with his daughter was very good. A, ask different. I remember the old campaign, think different. This is ask different. Problems, situations, they occur every day in our companies. And the question we first ask can guide us to an answer. It may not be the right answer. Think about what else can be impacting that problem, and let's get 3 or 4 questions on the board that we have to answer so we know we're answering the right one. And then H, humility. Humility is necessary. Things are good. Forgive people, ask for forgiveness. Things are bad, same rule applies.
Can you go back? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry. Oops. Apologize, too quick. Sorry. Let's see. No, this isn't it. That's the next one. Create value, C, handle objections. So again, my idea behind the model is you can look at things that are business related. They cover your persuasion skills, your selling skills. Equally important, a lot of you have this. I get that. I'm an ex-EO. I know what it's like to start a company. I know we need, be it gumption, balls, chutzpah, whatever you want to call it. We needed it to get where we got. We needed it to be in this room. What about our company? Do they have that same mindset? Okay. Everybody good with this? Okay. So, very quickly, this is who I am. Love to hear from you. Love to connect on LinkedIn with you. That's how you can reach me. I'm going to open it up to a couple of questions, and then I'll have one final thought for you. Any questions? This has probably gone on, I don't know if it's gone on longer because we started a little bit later, but if it did, I apologize. Any questions? Sometimes I get the question, aside from having read Viktor Frankl's book, what even drove me to that book? My mom's an actual. She was there when she was 16, just a little bit younger than my daughter now. So, I found that book, and I asked her, what are these things? Do they mean anything to you? She goes, I can remember. And the funny thing is, I asked about random acts of kindness. She could talk about other prisoners and family members and sisters that she survived with versus the family members she lost. She said even, there was one guard in particular I remember who was not as cruel as the other guards. So it's like, not as cruel, suddenly was this act of kindness. So, any questions? One final thought. We took the time to get here, we fought the traffic, we parked who knows how far from here. Hopefully we all got at least one key piece out of this. That's always my objective. But if we leave it there, that's nice, but it's almost inconsequential. So I urge you, if there are pieces here that you like, bring it to your company. Get them thinking differently about creating value, about handling objections, about accepting responsibility when things don't work out, not blaming other people. Well, it was their fault. What's the expression that success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan? It doesn't build cohesiveness in a company when people rush to take credit that isn't theirs. On the other side of that coin, when people don't accept responsibility, when things don't work out. It's okay. Not every one of our decisions is going to work out. So that's how I leave it. Take it back to your companies. Enjoy it. And I thank you guys very much. And I hope you got my good side on this meeting. All right. Thank you. Thank you.